Have you ever seen two Navy SEALs arrested like common criminals just for eating dinner? What unfolded in that courtroom will leave you stunned and questioning everything you thought you knew about justice. This wasn't just about a false arrest. It became a battle between lies and truth, arrogance and integrity. And the moment an admiral walked in, the entire story flipped. If this story shook you, let me know. Where are you watching from? Don't forget to like, share, and hit subscribe with the bell so you never miss the next unbelievable story. He thought a badge made him untouchable, but when the truth walked through the courtroom doors, the entire world discovered how fragile arrogance really is. It began on a warm Saturday evening in San Diego, just a few blocks from the harbor where Navy ships rested under the orange glow of street lamps. Inside a small, family-owned Mexican restaurant called Serrano's Grill, two friends sat in a corner booth near the window. To anyone watching, they looked like ordinary people laughing over tacos and salsa. But these two were anything but ordinary. They were both Navy SEALs, veterans who had risked their lives on missions most civilians couldn't imagine. Hocha, tall and composed, leaned back with a grin, wiping salsa from his chin. Karen, you always pick the hottest thing on the menu just to prove you can handle it, he teased. Karen, quick-witted and fiery, smirked back. Don't blame me because you can't take the heat. You think firefights are tough, but give you a jalapeno and suddenly you're crying. Their laughter carried the weight of people who had shared both danger and survival, bonded by battles far from home. But outside the restaurant window, a shadow lingered. A patrol car slowed to a crawl, headlights dimmed, presence heavy. Hocha noticed first, his trained eyes narrowing as the car idled too long. He said nothing, but instinct told him trouble was coming. Minutes later, as they stepped out into the cool night air and headed for HOA's black pickup truck, a sharp voice sliced the silence. Hey, you two, stop right there! They turned to see Officer Trent Maddox striding toward them, hand resting on his holster. Tall, broad-shouldered, and dripping with arrogance, Maddox moved like a man who believed the street belonged to him. Something wrong, officer? HOA asked calmly. His years of discipline reflected in every word. Vehicle looks suspicious, Maddox sneered, jerking his chin toward the truck. Whose is it? It's mine. Registration's in the glove box, HOA replied evenly. You're welcome to check. But Maddox wasn't interested in reason. Step away from the vehicle. Hands where I can see them, now. Karen folded her arms, frowning. We just finished dinner. We're not breaking any laws. Did I stutter? Maddox snapped, yanking out his flashlight even though the street was lit by the lamp above. Hands on the hood, now. HOA and Karen exchanged a knowing glance. They had faced ambushes in deserts, firefights in ruined cities, missions in hostile waters. Yet here, in their own country, they were being treated like criminals for the crime of existing. Before either could explain further, Maddox yanked their wrists back and snapped cold steel cuffs into place. The humiliation bit deeper than the metal itself. A couple walking by stopped to stare. Inside the restaurant, curious faces pressed against the glass. This is harassment, Karen said firmly, her voice steady, though anger simmered beneath. I'll decide what's harassment, Maddox smirked, tightening the cuffs. HOA clenched his jaw, fighting back words he wanted to unleash. Years of training reminded him to hold steady, yet, as he and Karen were shoved into the back of the patrol car, one truth echoed louder than the sirens. This wasn't about law, it was about power, and the fight had only just begun. The ride to the station was only a few miles, but for HOA and Karen, it felt longer than any deployment they had endured overseas. The red and blue lights reflected in the tinted glass, painting the city streets with fleeting streaks of accusation. HOA sat silently, his wrists bound tight behind him. Beside him, Karen kept her jaw clenched, her dark eyes fixed straight ahead. Neither spoke, because there was nothing left to say, not to each other, and certainly not to Officer Trent Maddox, who gripped the steering wheel like a man certain of his victory. The cruiser pulled into the Central Division precinct, a squat building that smelled of stale coffee and disinfectant. As Maddox led them through the front doors, officers at their desks glanced up. Some looked puzzled, others smirked, as if they'd seen this show before. Maddox's arrogance carried him forward like a shield. At the booking desk, a young officer named Jacobs tapped at a keyboard. Maddox slammed a clipboard onto the counter. 2 suspects, resisting arrest. Suspicious activity around a vehicle that doesn't belong to them. Jacobs frowned, tilting his head. Suspicious activity? That's kind of vague, isn't it? Maddox's glare cut through him like a blade. Do you want me to write the report, or do you? HOA took a slow breath and finally spoke, his voice steady but edged with steel. We weren't resisting anything. We complied, offered identification. I'm Lieutenant Commander HOA, United States Navy. This is Petty Officer First Class Karen. We've both served overseas. You can verify that with the Department of Defense right now. Maddox let out a harsh laugh. Oh, now you're war heroes. That's convenient. It's not convenient, Karen snapped back, her hands still cuffed. It's fact. Check it. Maddox leaned close, his smirk sharp. You think anyone here cares who you are out there? In here, you're just suspects, nothing more. Jacobs shifted uncomfortably, glancing between Maddox and the 2 restrained SEALs. Maybe we should at least run their names before— I said I'll handle the paperwork later, Maddox barked, cutting him off. 2 other officers escorted HOA and Karen to a holding cell. The metal door clanged shut behind them, the sound echoing off bare concrete walls. The bench was cold, the fluorescent light overhead buzzing faintly. Karen lowered herself onto the bench, shaking her head. I've been shot at in Afghanistan, but I never thought I'd be sitting in a cell back home for grabbing dinner. HOA sat beside her, elbows resting on his knees. This isn't about the law. It's about him. Men like Maddox need control. When they see people who don't fit their picture of belonging, they invent reasons to put them down. She exhaled, her voice softer now. We've dealt with worse. We'll get through this. But even as she spoke, they both knew the truth. In combat, survival depended on clarity. Here, in this cell, survival depended on a system that often bent toward arrogance instead of justice. And outside, Maddox was already writing a story that could bury them if no one intervened. The next morning, the courthouse buzzed with anticipation. Officer Malloy strutted in as if the world bent beneath his badge, his uniform crisp, his expression smug. To him, this was already one. His report, thick with fabricated details, sat under his arm like a weapon. HOA and Karen entered in orange jumpsuits, shackled at the wrists. The symbolism was intentional, humiliation before trial. They kept their heads high, their discipline evident even in silence. Marcus leaned toward Karen and whispered, We've faced worse in combat zones. She nodded, but the tightness in her jaw betrayed her fury. The bailiff called the room to order. Judge Sloan, stern and composed, entered. Malloy wasted no time. He painted a vivid but false narrative. The suspects resisted. They matched a theft profile. They refused to cooperate. His words were polished, rehearsed, and designed to poison perception before truth had a chance. The gallery leaned forward, some nodding, others whispering. It was working. For a moment, it seemed HOA and Karen were just 2 criminals unlucky enough to cross the wrong cop. Then, HOA rose. Shackles clinked as he addressed the bench with quiet authority. Your Honor, none of that is true. We offered identification. We complied. We are active-duty Navy SEALs. We've risked our lives for this nation. The courtroom stirred. Reporters scribbled furiously. Even Judge Sloan arched an eyebrow. Karen stood next, her voice sharper. We don't need theatrics. Our records speak for themselves. But his lies? They crumble under truth. Malloy laughed aloud. And I'm the mayor of San Diego. Military ID tricks are as old as time. His arrogance dripped like oil across the room. The tension thickened, truth whispering against the roar of lies. No one could guess that before the hour ended, the balance of power in that courtroom would change forever. The heavy oak doors creaked open, interrupting the heated exchanges. A ripple passed through the gallery as a tall figure in full navy dress blues stepped inside. Medals gleamed on his chest, his presence commanding silence without a word. Admiral Jonathan Reeves, commander of Naval Special Warfare. Malloy's smirk faltered for the first time. He muttered under his breath, "What the hell is he doing here?" Reeves strode toward the defense table, his gaze locked on HOA and Karen. He stopped just short, turning to face the judge. "Your Honor, I am Admiral Jonathan Reeves. These two are not criminals. They are warriors. Lieutenant Commander HOA and Petty Officer Karen have served this nation with honor beyond reproach." Gasps filled the room. Reporters' pens raced. Even Judge Sloan leaned forward, recognizing the gravity of the man before her. Reeves placed a thick folder on the table. Here are their official records: commendations, mission reports, security clearances. These are not the actions of criminals. These are Americans who have risked everything. Malloy stepped forward, his voice louder, desperate. "Your Honor, this is irregular. Service doesn't exempt anyone from the law." Reeves turned, pinning him with a hawk-like stare. "No one asked for exemption, Officer Malloy. We ask for truth, something your report lacks." A murmur swept the gallery. For the first time, Malloy looked less like an untouchable cop and more like a man cornered by the very system he thought protected him. The judge, stone-faced, tapped her gavel. "This court will hear evidence. Truth over titles, facts over arrogance. Officer Malloy, your report will face scrutiny." The storm had shifted. Malloy's lies no longer carried the same weight. HOA and Karen weren't alone anymore. The highest voice in the Navy now stood beside them. Judge Sloan adjusted her glasses. "Officer Malloy, your report contradicts the character of these individuals. What evidence supports your claims?" Malloy hesitated, fumbling with papers. "My word, my observations. That's enough." Reeves interrupted smoothly. "With respect, Your Honor, I anticipated this. Cameras outside Delgado's grill captured everything. That footage has already been secured." Malloy's face drained of color. "Footage? That's inadmissible." "Bailiff," Judge Sloan cut in. "Summon the restaurant manager. Bring the video." Minutes later, the footage played on the courtroom monitor. Gasps echoed as the truth unspooled. HOA offering his wallet, moving slowly and calmly, only to be shoved against his truck. Karen compliant, hands raised, yet cuffed roughly. No resistance, no aggression, just compliance met with force. The gallery erupted. Reporters scribbled like wildfire. Judge Sloan leaned back, eyes narrowing. "Officer Malloy, care to explain why your report contradicts this footage?" Malloy stammered, sweat beading his temple. "The angles, lighting, it doesn't show everything." Reeves shook his head. "It shows enough." Karen rose, her voice cutting through the chaos. "You humiliated us, arrested us without cause, and tried to bury us with lies, because you thought no one would challenge you." HOA added, steady as steel. "You picked the wrong people. Truth stands, lies collapse." The gavel cracked once. Judge Sloan's voice carried over the din. "Officer Malloy, this court takes false reporting very seriously. Bailiff, escort him from the stand. He will be held pending investigation." Malloy's confidence shattered. Cuffs clinked around his wrists. The same sound he'd relished hours before. But this time, the smirk was gone. Panic replaced arrogance. HOA and Karen sat straighter, shoulders squared. For the first time since their arrest, justice tilted in their favor. The gallery buzzed, reporters shouting questions. But inside the courtroom, the air was thick with resolution. Judge Sloan tapped the folder of military records. "Lieutenant Commander HOA, Petty Officer Karen. Based on evidence, there is no basis for these charges. You are free to go." The words hung heavy, powerful. HOA exhaled slowly, tension draining from his chest. Karen closed her eyes, savoring the weight lifting at last. The judge turned to the gallery. "Let this serve as a reminder. A badge is a symbol of trust, not a shield for abuse. Corruption will not stand in this court." Reeves stepped forward, his hand resting firmly on HOA's shoulder, then Karen's. You carried yourselves with the same discipline I've seen in combat. I'm proud of you both. Karen's voice wavered with emotion. Thank you, Admiral. I don't know what would have happened without you. Reeves shook his head. You'd have been fine. Truth always finds a way out. But sometimes it needs a push. Outside, the courthouse steps swarmed with cameras and microphones. Reporters shouted, "How does it feel to be free after such humiliation?" HOA paused, his voice carrying above the crowd. It feels like a win for truth. But the bigger question, how many people never get their truth heard? Karen added firmly. No one should lose their dignity because of lies. Justice isn't about power, it's about fairness. Today proved that. The sun broke through the San Diego clouds as they walked down the courthouse steps, Reeves just behind them. The battle wasn't just won, it had revealed something larger. Truth is a weapon, and when wielded with courage, corruption crumbles. News of the courtroom clash spread nationwide within hours. Headlines screamed, Admiral walks into courtroom, exposes corrupt cop. Talk shows debated it. Social media erupted with hashtags. Hashtag stand with HOA and hashtag justice for Karen. HOA and Karen became unlikely symbols, not of victimhood, but of resilience. Veterans wrote messages of support. Civilians flooded online forums with outrage and solidarity. But fame was a double-edged sword. While their names cleared, the ordeal lingered like a scar. Karen told reporters, "We survived this, but countless others don't have an admiral walking through their courtroom doors." That needs to change. Reeves echoed her sentiment at a press briefing. This wasn't about two SEALs. It was about abuse of power. Integrity must matter for every citizen. Malloy, now suspended, awaited trial on charges of false reporting and misconduct. His arrogance had collapsed, leaving him a cautionary tale whispered through police halls. Yet, the victory sparked new battles. HOA and Karen testified before Congress weeks later, advocating reforms in police accountability. Their words carried weight, not just as Navy SEALs, but as voices who had faced injustice firsthand. Karen's closing statement before the Senate Judiciary Committee resonated nationwide. We fight for freedom abroad. We should never have to fight for dignity at home. Applause followed. Cameras flashed. And in that moment, the story of two SEALs arrested outside a taco stand became a rallying cry for justice across America. Months passed, but the ripple effects endured. Departments across the country quietly reviewed policies on false arrests and accountability. Community groups quoted HOA and Karen's testimony as inspiration. The two SEALs returned to training, but their lives had changed. Strangers stopped them in airports. Veterans saluted. Children asked for photos. Karen smiled but admitted privately, "I never wanted fame, just fairness." HOA nodded. Sometimes fairness comes at a cost, but it's worth it. Meanwhile, Malloy's trial gripped headlines. Prosecutors presented damning evidence. Fabricated reports, prior complaints swept under the rug, a trail of arrogance unchecked. The jury didn't take long. Guilty on all counts. As Malloy was led away in chains, HOA remarked quietly to Karen, "Funny, same cuffs, different wrists." She nodded, her eyes steady. Difference is, this time, justice wore them. The case became a lesson taught in academies. Authority without integrity collapses. And for HOA and Karen, the ordeal that began outside a taco stand had transformed into something far larger. A symbol that courage, discipline, and truth can break even the strongest walls of corruption. Years later, the story of HOA and Karen was no longer just a headline. It was history. Textbooks cited the case as a turning point in law enforcement accountability. Documentaries replayed the courtroom footage where an admiral exposed a lie with undeniable truth. HOA continued his service, rising in rank, while Karen became a powerful advocate for veterans' rights. Together, they spoke at universities, telling young Americans, courage isn't just for the battlefield, it's for the courtroom, the street, the moment when silence would be easier. Their story reminded the nation that corruption doesn't fall quietly. It collapses loudly when confronted with truth. One evening, Karen reflected aloud. We were just trying to eat dinner, and somehow it turned into this. HOA smiled faintly. #@meta. Sex. Sometimes history doesn't ask permission. It just chooses you. In the end, the tale of HOA and Karen wasn't about tacos, arrests, or even the courtroom spectacle. It was about integrity, about how lies can tower high, but crumble with a single brick of truth. The badge Malloy once wore became a symbol, not of protection, but of what happens when arrogance corrodes authority. The Admiral's salute reminded the world that respect isn't demanded, it's earned. And HOA and Karen showed that dignity can be defended with the same courage as a battlefield. Their story leaves us with one truth. Justice isn't automatic. It requires people willing to stand, even when standing costs everything. So the next time corruption raises its head, remember HOA and Karen, two warriors who proved that courage can bring walls crashing down. And to everyone listening, if this story moved you, drop a comment below. Where are you watching from? Don't forget to like, share, and hit the subscribe button with the bell, because stories like this remind us that truth, courage, and integrity matter. Always.